or via Progressive 107.2 FM, we welcome you to this press briefing where the political leader of United Progressive Party, Mr. Harold Lovell, will go into details of the UPP Manifesto for 2023, which we tagged 7 Pillars for Relief, Recovery and Shared Prosperity. At this time, I invite Mr. Harold Lovell to present highlights of the manifesto, following which we'll entertain questions from the public. Mr. Lovell.
Good morning, all. Good morning. And to the Journalist Assembly, special good morning. We're here today to release the contents of the manifesto for the United Progressive Party with respect to the upcoming general elections. We've stated in the opening part of the manifesto, first of all, the reason why we think a manifesto is necessary. And the primary reason is that this represents the culmination of a series of consultations and discussions which have taken place around the island over the past 2 years. We've had the benefit of holding these discussions and consultations with our colleagues in the various communities and the residents and the members of the villages. We have also spoken with persons from various interest groups, and we are satisfied that this document really represents our proposed solutions to the problems and concerns which have been raised with us in the course of these discussions and consultations. We also consider a manifesto to be a very important document to allow the electorate to keep any new government focused on its promises. We want this to be a document which the public will be able to use to refer to the progress that we intend to make and to be able to measure the progress that we make as we proceed during any 5-year term. We've named it 7 Pillars for Progress, for Relief, Recovery and Shared Prosperity. And the 7 pillars that we have outlined are as follows. The first pillar is that we will pursue a Vision 2040 National Master Plan. We think this is something that is very important as we seek to build a social consensus that is national in scope. We would like to emerge with a document similar to what was done in Jamaica several years ago, where we engage the entire population and we bring representatives from the various sectors of our society, including the political sector, the economic sector, the social sector, because what we will aim to achieve is a document that all who live here, Antiguans and Barbudans by birth and by choice, all can share in the vision for the future. It is our hope that with this document, which would emerge from these discussions, we will have a guideline, a master plan, a blueprint, so that even though governments may change, the plan will remain focused on the goals that would have been established. Job creation is a key priority for any new administration, and a UPP administration will place great emphasis on creating the pro-business, pro-ease of doing business environment. We feel that it is important for us to spur growth by making it easy for small, medium-sized, and other businesses to compete and participate within the business environment in a way that, as far as possible, is free from hassle. And so our aim will be to reduce the cost of doing business, and to improve the ease of doing business. Because in order for us to achieve our goal of revitalizing the economy, it's going to be very important that we have a business sector that is comfortable and feels that it has an environment and a government that is committed to the success of their enterprises. The third pillar is housing security. And we have devised several options that we think will assist the ordinary man and woman in achieving their goal of buying their first home or expanding their first home or buying another home. We have put on the table a number of options, including the rent-to-own, the buyer assist, and the community construct. These are just some of the options that have come about as a result of the discussions that we've had with people, realizing that many have great difficulty in getting on that ladder of home ownership. Education revolution. Here we wish to adopt the position that education is a right, as mandated by the United Nations. We look at education from preschool up to the end of secondary school, access as of right. Tertiary education, we certainly will pursue a mandate that will allow us to grant access, reasonable access to all who wish to pursue tertiary education, so that there will be no bar or impediment for anyone who wishes to pursue tertiary education. Economic dignity, putting more money in the people's pocket. This means that we will address the question of job creation in a very aggressive way. And in doing so, we will seek also to deliver a national minimum wage so that it's a living wage. And we've put on the table that the United Progressive Party, if elected, we will implement through the appropriate channels a $10 per hour national minimum wage. We've heard the submissions made by the unions, and it is clear to us that as a basic minimum, this is something that every working man and every working woman in Antigua and Barbuda should be able to say that they earn no less than $10 per hour. This will affect mainly gas station attendants. It will affect house and home domestics. It will affect security guards and personnel, and all of us who are at the bottom end of the income earning ladder. Next, pillar number 6, water stability. We all know that water has been a major problem. We have an administration that promised to fix the water problem. Well, we give a solemn undertaking that we will do all that is required, and it is set out here in the manifesto, in order for us to achieve water stability with sound infrastructure and a clean environment. Our pillar number 7 is youth empowerment, and we have put several options where we intend to empower young people so that they participate in the governance of our country. And also, we will make certain that young people will be the driving force in a re-energized national economy by doing those things, creating the opportunities, and making it easy for them to not only do business, but to be successful in business. Now, just in terms of a focus, there are a few ideas that I would wish to highlight with respect to the creation of a pro-business and pro-jobs environment. I will read from the manifesto verbatim so that you will understand exactly where we're coming from as far as this angle is concerned. We will ensure that major investment projects give locals first preference for employment in all positions at all levels. Where suitably qualified locals cannot be found to fill middle and upper management positions, local trainees must be placed in deputy positions until they can assume management roles. We feel that this is critical in terms of the empowerment of the citizens and residents of Antigua and Barbuda, and this is really putting into force provisions that already exist in the Antigua and Barbuda Labor Code. Many of these items in the Labor Code, however, have not been implemented in the spirit in which they were drafted. It is our intention to give life to those provisions within the Antigua and Barbuda Labor Code. We will fast-track private sector investment projects. This is to spur employment and economic activity within the first 100 days of a UPP administration. Something that we intend to introduce in order to improve the business climate and the business culture in Antigua is, in consultation with the financial sector, we will legislate borrowers' insurance policy, which protects personal and business borrowers from property loss and bankruptcy. Borrowers will be required to pay a premium within their loans, which offers protection up to a certain level of loss. This is very important, and we will note that, for example, in the United States, which has a dynamic entrepreneurial culture, that every effort is made to protect persons. In Antigua, one of the impediments to entrepreneurship is the fact that you can lose so much if your venture is unsuccessful. We understand that entrepreneurship, business, by its very nature, is based on risk. And therefore, risk by definition means you may win some and you will lose some. We want to make sure that if your venture is not as successful as you would like, if you have to go under, there will be no stigma. We will seek, in consultation with the banks, to have a policy which will allow coverage for this type of loss in order to help to create a new business culture and to make it easier for persons to take the risk in order to invest. We will revitalize the Antigua and Barbuda Investment Authority by empowering and expanding its role to improve the ease of doing business. Most of you will know that in 2014, at the time when we left office, our ranking at the time was 67. special focus will be placed on the creative industries and generally youth-centric centers. This is in keeping with our vision of making Antigua and Barbuda the entertainment and events capital of the Eastern Caribbean. And we will be promoting investment by young people who are the main players in this sector so that they will be able to expand their current operations, whether as promoters or players of some different kind within this sector, empower these people through concessions, incentives, and government contracts. These are some of the issues that I wish to raise. The manifesto is available online for anyone who would wish to see it. We have a limited number of hard copies, but we are inviting everyone to take advantage of the opportunities which are presented by downloading the manifesto, which is available online. Thank you very much. I'm now available for any questions which our distinguished journalists may have. Yes?
Rehabilitation of prisoners and for social justice.
Can you bring it to the page, please? The page, you have the page? We are uncompromising in our belief that within the first 5 years, we must construct a new prison. I do not think anyone can get away from the fact that the prison as it now exists is really not fit for human beings. And I think this was borne out with the example from the person from the United Kingdom, where the government of the United Kingdom insisted that any citizen of the United Kingdom, yes, they agreed he can be incarcerated, but not in inhumane conditions. We believe that what the British government has said and done indicates a global standard that we will aspire to meet. And so for us, it will be very important for a new prison to be constructed. And we will spare no effort to have a new prison constructed.
The UPP government would respect the principle that lands in Barbuda are owned in common by the people. It says you would put a committee in place to monitor development plans and projects. Can you elaborate on what that might mean for projects like PLH, Paradise Found, that are clearly in full swing but still remain very controversial among many Barbudan people?
We believe a lot of this has to do with the management approach and the leadership approach. The Barbudans are proud people. They have a long history, they have a heritage. We're not going to reach anywhere in a harmonious way if we adopt an adversarial stance, as this administration has done. It will be our approach to sit with the various players, including the Barbuda Council, and the major investors, you mentioned PLH and Paradise Found, and we will work out a method whereby the developments can take place, but they must take place in or with full regard to any concerns that may arise under the laws of Antigua and Barbuda. Antigua and Barbuda, we have an environmental division, and that division is charged with the management of our environmental resources. We will be guided by the science, and we'll be guided by the advice of the experts who are paid by the government in order to protect the environment. So we would aim not to involve ourselves in political controversy when it comes to economic development. We'll be guided by the science, and we'll do what is right in order to ensure that generations to come are not deprived of the resources of the nation.
One more quick question, if I may. The ABLP is campaigning heavily on a platform of experience. Some of their candidates are veterans, as we know. The UPP is predominantly first-time candidates with perhaps nominal political experience. What do you want to say to reassure the electorate that the country would be in safe hands with this UPP team?
The country will be in safe hands. We have a team who have all demonstrated their capacity with regard to looking out for the interests of the common man. We believe that the most important attribute of anyone who enters politics is that they must have compassion with passion. That is certainly a feature in our team. Almost everyone on the team has a history where they have been involved in some form of community activism or community development, charitable organizations, and they have an understanding of what the people want. Sometimes we mistake the role of ministers for the role of CEOs or permanent secretaries or technicians. The minister brings to the table the interests of his or her constituents and the people of the nation. The technicians, they're the ones who are qualified to do implementation and to provide advice based on their qualifications. And in doing so, we allow for government to run the way government is intended to run. I think we've seen, especially with this administration, an attempt for ministers to supplant technicians and senior administrative officers. That is not the way we intend to run government. We intend for the persons who are elected and who form the cabinet to spend time developing serious policies for the development of the nation. As far as the nuts and bolts and the nitty-gritty is concerned, that's the work of persons who've been to university, who themselves have experience in these fields, and who will be guided by the minister to make sure that you don't have somebody who's very bright but has no compassion, no sense of empathy for the people. To me, that is far worse than someone who, may be deemed to be inexperienced in governance.
I have more, but I'll pass on.
Okay, I have two from Elisha George, Island Press Box. The first one is, given the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, how does your party plan to achieve some of its ideas, like increasing the minimum wage, no less than $10 per hour, and government salaries and paying severance to LIAT workers? That's the first question.
Yes, everything comes down to priorities and planning. Planning, for example, with regard to the liquidation of debt. How do we address the hundreds of persons who are owed millions of dollars by the government? That certainly is a stated intention by the UPP to address the issue of outstanding debt. We believe that the debts that are owed need to be structured. So currently, there's a very bad practice, and that bad practice is, if government owes you money, you're required to visit the Treasury almost on a weekly basis to be told by a clerk, nothing for you today. What we will do is we will immediately hold a creditors conference, and by creditors conference, it means the solid waste workers, the business people, whoever is owed money by the government becomes a creditor of the government becomes a debtor. We will work out customized arrangements so that the debt will be turned into a bond. If the bond will be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever is customized with the individual, we will then pay interest on the bond, but we will stage it over a period of time so that they will be repaid, but in a way that is predictable. So you won't have to visit the Treasury any longer to say, is there anything for me today? To be told no, to come back the following week. We will be able to say, on the 10th of March 2024, you'll be paid X number of dollars. On a 6-monthly or a quarterly basis, you will get interest at such and such a percent. This will allow those who are owed money to plan It will allow them to deal with their own financial institutions, to be able to obtain financial assistance or loans so that they know that on such and such a date they will receive X number of dollars. This will help to stabilize the business environment. So as far as we're concerned, it's not a case of being elected and then we say the following day or the following week, everybody will come and collect their checks. Clearly, that would not be feasible. It wouldn't make any sense. So we intend to structure the loans that, or the debts that are owed by the government to persons mainly in the private sector by introducing bonds for these persons and honoring and respecting the terms of the bond. Now, the other question was a $10 minimum.
Yes.
Yes, there's some things that in our view we must implement because people's lives and livelihoods depend on it. The unions carried out a very thorough survey and they found that at $10, persons would not even be put in a position where they would be as well off as they were 5 years ago. It really puts persons back to between 2008 and 2009. And that is because the rate of inflation has greatly outstripped the increase in wages. With inflation, as it has occurred over the last several months, it has placed many families not just on the breadline, but literally on the poverty line. Now, if we do not insist on a basic minimum, based on the research that was carried out, then our people will continue to be pauperized. They will continue to face increasing hardships. We would prefer instead, having implemented a $10 minimum wage, which we say is a basic living wage, and we would enforce the provisions of the Antigua and Barbuda Labor Code for a review to take place every 2 years. If we do not do that, we will be failing our people and we will be allowing our people to fall deeper and deeper into poverty, and we do not agree with that, we do not subscribe to that, and therefore for us, if there is an employer who has a difficulty, the government will have mechanisms so that these difficulties can be addressed. And we would find customized solutions to alleviate the difficulties, to soften any problems that may occur as a result of the change, and to make it easy for us to achieve a win-win situation for the employer and the employee.
Okay, the second and final question from Elisha George. Regarding the UPP's intention to introduce a no more oil policy, which mandates, among other things, no more new constructions of fossil fuel based on power plants, how will this affect the services that APC and APUA now provide from a financial perspective? In essence, what phases are envisioned that will make this successful?
Well, the critical word there, of course, is new. And so we're saying going forward, we would be working closely with service providers. We would be working with investors, local and otherwise. We will say that anyone who wishes to make an investment in the energy sector, Antigua and Barbuda is open for business, but we're open for green business. Those that currently exist, we won't interfere with existing contractual relations. So, in answer to the question, we're talking about new plans going forward where there will be an emphasis on green energy rather than fossil-based energy.
A question from Twin Island Media. I noticed in the manifesto it spoke about the United Progressive Party's plan to progressively reduce the rate of, I believe it was corporation tax.
Corporate income tax.
Down from 25% to 15%. It also speaks to the repeal and replacement of the unincorporated business tax. I would note as well that when the current administration came in, they repealed personal income tax. And we have discussed so far, or at least heard of, a number of areas where the party says it tends to spend more in terms of getting things on track and so on. So the question really is, where would a United Progressive Party administration achieve savings? That's the question persons are asking. If you're taking away or bringing down the corporation tax, getting rid of the unincorporated business tax, repealing it with something else, but you're getting rid of the unincorporated business tax, and you're also looking to spend on a variety of things, where you're achieving savings.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start with the repeal of the unincorporated business tax. Again, tax measures and fiscal policy must have some underlying philosophy. What are you trying to achieve by implementing this tax? What is the outcome or the output? The unincorporated business tax is part of one of the biggest cons ever played on the people of Antigua and Barbuda. Even in your language, you said the government abolished personal income tax. The government abolished personal income tax if you work for somebody, but the government retained personal income tax if you work for yourself. Now, it is our desired intention to aggressively promote entrepreneurship. If I'm making $5,000 a month working for someone else, I pay no personal income tax. But if I decide to branch off as an entrepreneur on my own and earn $5,000 a month, that $5,000 is taxed. That, in our view, works as a disincentive for potential entrepreneurs. Why would I go out on my own, earn $5,000, pay tax on it, when I can work for someone, earn $5,000 and pay no tax? So we feel that this creates a disincentive and an unequal alignment if we are to pursue entrepreneurship in a serious way. What we say, however, is not that we would not have persons who are in the business sector of unincorporated business pay any tax. No. We said that we'd replace it with a flat rate based on the size of your business. So this means, therefore, and this comes as a result of having spoken to many persons out in the field. Like, I was speaking to a fisherman in Bansil, and he said, look, he has to take off sometimes 2 and 3 days in a month just to get his paperwork right for the unincorporated business tax. Every little piece of paper, everything, he is not in the business of doing some of those things. And it's a burden for him. What we say we would do is we would have small, medium, and large businesses. And you will self-classify. You will classify yourself based on your annual turnover, which would be set in advance. And so if you are a small business, for argument's sake, annually you pay $100. Medium business, you pay $250. Large business, you pay $500. These are just examples, of course. In that way, I am of the view, and having done some preliminary surveys on this matter, the government will make more money. Because a lot of people right now are not even in the net. How much will we lose? At the moment, the government in unincorporated business tax collects between $5 and $6 million, and hardly that. They don't collect even as much as $10 million. So we're not talking about the equivalent of, say, personal income tax, where we abolish $45 million, which is a much bigger slice. We feel that because we'll have the flat tax, we will either collect the same amount or we'll collect more, because what you now go for is a higher level of compliance. You make it simpler. If you're a small business, this is what you pay. And because you self-classify, that makes it even easier. Of course, what we will have to do is to verify. And so we understand that a large business will be naturally tempted to classify themselves as a small business. We will have systems so that there can be verification. But the idea will be to increase the level of compliance whilst you reduce the amount that is actually paid by the business. So that's as far as the unincorporated business tax is concerned. And that's because we want to spur entrepreneurship. So you no longer pay personal income tax, you now pay a business tax. In one case, the corporation tax, that's where you're paying a tax on a corporate business, an incorporated business. at 25% currently. We will have a flat tax for unincorporated businesses. So all businesses will pay, but there will be no personal income tax, either if you're employed by someone or if you're self-employed. Now, why would we want to reduce incrementally the corporate income tax? We feel that there is great potential in the Caribbean, and indeed in many small island developing states, to develop a tax regime that is attractive, not just for local businesses, but for businesses outside. If you're following what's happening in the United States, they're moving towards a universal tax rate of 15%. And so we would seek at least to make Antigua competitive by not going above that and not going below that, where we may place ourselves at a disadvantage in terms of revenue intake. But we said incrementally, we would bring ourselves in line with what will be the new global norm of 15%. Make Antigua and Barbuda more competitive. We've looked at what has happened, for example, in Ireland. In Ireland, they set a strategy which has been hugely successful in attracting multinational corporations to register in Ireland because they offered very favorable tax rates, I think at 12.5%. That's the line that we'll be pursuing. The whole idea will be to increase volume. It's not just a question of reducing it because we want to be nice or we just think that, hey, it would be a great idea to do. There's a strategy behind it and there's a philosophy behind it. The strategy and philosophy are, we must drive the private sector in Antigua and Barbuda. We must create a dynamic local economy. We must encourage people to invest. And all that I've said so far, you've seen. We want to protect people who take the decision to invest with the insurance policy that we want to introduce against losses incurred during investment. We want to make it easier for people to transition from being employed by someone and being employed by themselves. So it's consistent with our policy on entrepreneurship. Similarly, with corporate tax being reduced, we want to also incentivize businesses to register in Antigua because of the attractive rate, and we want local businesses to do that and foreign businesses as well. But perhaps more importantly than anything else that I've said with respect to business is we want to create a new business culture. And so we'll be encouraging persons to become incorporated. We'll be encouraging persons to get registered in some form that will be recognizable so that concessions can be granted, not on a willy-nilly basis, but in a structured way. So that's really the philosophy and the strategy behind everything that we're saying. And whilst I'm saying that, let me mention the entertainment tax. Because we also said that we would remove the entertainment tax, and some people are saying, why would you do that? The government, on the last 2 years, we actually picked up less than $1 million in entertainment tax. And pre-pandemic, it was between $3 and $4 million. So again, when you look at the benefit that you're trying to achieve, we say that the benefit outweighs whatever fiscal loss will be incurred in the short term. But the long-term vision and goal is that we have a vibrant entrepreneurial culture in Antigua, and things like entertainment. We want us to be, Antigua to be the entertainment capital. So you have to incentivize that. So that's really the argument and the reasoning behind what we're doing.
All right, a question from Observer. So we see that you intend to unify the national ID under the singular electronic ID card. Now, there are concerns about security with something like this, where all of your information will be on one electronic device. How do you intend to ensure that it is not only secure, but that it is accessible to persons who may not be as technologically advanced as others?
The technical details, that will be worked out by the technicians. The broad idea is one that, happily, is not new. There are at least 100 countries in the world that have one national ID card. And so we would merely be joining the line of the many countries who already do that. I believe that most of these countries would have had to address and tackle questions of security, convenience, and other issues that will arise naturally. But it is not our intention to reinvent the wheel. It is our intention merely to look at the best practices, the best technologies, and to adopt those so that we can have something that is seamless, something that works, and is convenient for all.
We also see a discussion into further development into sports. Now, sports as it is not just the physical aspect, but we also see an increase locally of esports and more tabletop games such as Domino Wari and things like that, which are very much in our culture. What do you intend to do to help facilitate growth in those aspects as well?
Again, those are technical issues which will be worked out. The fact of tabletop sports, I wouldn't go into any details with respect to what we will do with tabletop sports. Suffice it to say that those persons who are knowledgeable and skilled and trained in those fields will take the advice from those persons. The policy that we will advance is that we eventually would like to see sports to become a sports sector within the economy. You recall that before tourism became a separate sector and a ministry in 1973 under the PLM administration, tourism was dealt with under the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Commerce. It eventually broke out as a separate sector. We will want to do the same thing as far as sports is concerned. We believe that there is a tremendous potential in the area of sports. Sports training for sports administrators. We'll be able to export people who are knowledgeable and trained in this field. We believe that we should have a government policy which will seek to attract sports teams from overseas. Government will put in the investment so that persons who come here will be comfortable. They have modern facilities that can be used. So Antigua can be used as an area for training. It can be used as a place where we have not only international games, which we currently have. We seek to heighten and enhance that. But more importantly, in terms of sports administration and coaching and physiotherapy and all the various disciplines that are associated with sports, we believe that there is the opportunity presented that happily no one else seems to have taken up in the Caribbean, save for Jamaica to some extent. We would want in the Eastern Caribbean to be the first out of the blocks to develop a genuine sports sector within the economy. Not just sports for recreation, sports as an economic activity.
Okay, so Robert Emmanuel from Observer. In your third pillar, you discuss community construct model.
Yeah.
Can you explain more about what exactly that means?
Yes. The community construct is a new idea that we've put on the table, again, coming out of our discussions with persons who are desirous of having an affordable home. The government will introduce a program whereby we will assist you to procure and acquire materials, whether it be the 2x4s, the 4x4s, plywood, whatever, lumber, cement, aggregates that you need. The government will assist in this regard, and you then will be responsible for providing the labor. And you may do it on a community basis, a family basis, or any other basis where you can get friends or associates to assist in the construction of the home. This is an option that we will present so that for persons who may not be able to get into the bank for a mortgage or who otherwise may not be able to qualify for any of the other options, we present this one and we say, look, we'll help you to get the materials and you provide the labor through whatever channels and means that you can. And we guarantee that this will reduce the cost of house building.
All right, Samantha Simon with Observer. So we see that you intend to increase youth involvement in political decision-making and things of that sort, especially with the inclusion of the National Youth Council, National Youth Advocates, and the National Youth Parliament.
Yes.
Now, these three bodies are very different, one of which is actually a private organization. With having them get more involved, how do you intend to regulate them to ensure that their bodies internally are adequate in being able to make those sort of decisions?
Well, it's really a process whereby we bring youth who are organized in whatever format. I mean, those that are listed, the list is not exhaustive. We would also want to reach out to the Kiwanis, to the JCs, to the Rotary, Rotaract. The idea is wherever youth present themselves in an organized way, we will tap into that organization in order to get the best ideas coming out. So our job will not be the job of policing the internal affairs. Our job will be to look at bona fide organizations and to seek the opinions of the members of these bona fide organizations so that their ideas can be taken into account with regard to any measures that we intend to take.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
We have time.
And then
There was an
Make up
interesting
the
part in the environmental section about converting all government offices to energy efficient smart buildings. Given the fact that some buildings are in a pretty dire state infrastructurally, can you elaborate a little on perhaps the logistics?
Could you just give me the page again?
And the cost of doing that? I don't have the physical copy here.
Okay, never mind. Basically, what we're looking at is transitioning to green. And obviously, that is a matter that will depend on individual circumstances. But the policy goal is to wean Antigua away from fossil fuels and to bring Antigua into the modern age using green technologies. We want to lead by example. We would want to lead by example once elected as a government. And that means that government buildings should lead the way because we're hoping that private sector offices will eventually go in this direction as well. So it means using more solar panels. That primarily would be the main source of energy, the sun.
Okay, so 2 questions. You have in your manifesto, page 18, that you will reconfigure the APWA board to include stakeholders from different diverse backgrounds. And you have under it faith leaders. Can you just explain exactly why faith leaders would be important in this sort of...
Well, yes, and again, this came as a result of listening. And the faith community, they're very strong on the feeling that they tend to be left out. Sometimes, again, you speak of youth, you speak of women, you speak of several different interest sectors. The faith community is very important, and they have asked to be included in areas of governance where their congregations are affected. And we think it's only reasonable that the APUA, which manages electricity and water and telephone, that those persons who can speak on behalf of the congregations, we think they provide a very important voice on this matter. And so you're talking about water rates, electricity rates, policies that will affect people. It's important that we have the broadest, widest, most diverse views at the table of the directors so that everyone's view can be taken into account.
Okay, we'll take our final question for Mr. Emmanuel and Mr. Murdoch. Okay, so that will be your final question. Yes, we're looking at the time.
Yes. Well, I was going to ask a follow-up. In terms of the faith leaders, do you mean not just the Christian community, but also Muslim?
Well, that's why we said faith. But the fact is, and the reality is that in Antigua, 90%, 95 or more percent, it's not a precise figure. Mr. Murdoch would probably be able to give me the precise figure. But I would say more than 90% of those who profess belief in a divine being are Christian. Whether it's Seventh-day Adventist, Roman Catholic, or whomever. But I believe we do have a Muslim community, but it is still relatively small. We have the Rastafari community, which is large, but again, in terms of structure, one would have to look to get voices within a structured way so that you know the voices represent broader groups.
Well, this was my final question.
Yes.
On the technology and innovation, you have, and this is page 53, you have online voting to weigh in on matters up for public consideration. What exactly do you plan to make sure that this works out and there's no sort of security risk attached?
Well, again, in terms of security risk, we have people who are trained in cybersecurity and making sure that things proceed in a way that allows every voice to be heard. It's all about broadening the democracy in Antigua and Barbuda. As we go forward and we speak about an agenda for transformation, these are ideas that emerged. I believe it was a young man who put that idea to us, and we adopted it. But the whole idea was use modern technology to tap into the views and opinions of everyone. 100 years ago, you would have had to attend a meeting in some hall or something to hear your views. We believe we can use the technology to get the same result in a quicker way and with a broader scope.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Political Leader. And I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you to the journalists assembled here today, and for those of you, other persons who have joined us on other platforms, we thank you for sharing the morning, part of the morning with us. Without a doubt, this manifesto reflects the change that people in Antigua and Barbuda want to see. And I'm not sure if the political leader would have said it, but the contents were derived after over 2 years of speaking to the people, consulting with the people of Antigua and Barbuda. So again, we say thank you very much. If you have not yet had your digital copy, you can go to the UPP website, Vote UPP, and download your copy, or we can make it available as soon as possible. So again, thank you very much, and we wish all a very good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there was no need for the helmet.